We're going to pick up that conversation with Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales, who joins us now from San Antonio. Congressman, welcome back to Face the Nation. You just heard Senator Kelly describe the frustration he experienced and the personal stories he witnessed in these ICE detention facilities. Given your oversight role, have you had similar concerns?
Good morning, Margaret. And while I appreciate Senator Kelly's service, the part that he's getting wrong with ICE is for every sad story of someone being deported, there's 10 sad stories of Americans that have had their lives turned upside down because of the illegal immigration. And to be demonizing ICE agents is not right. You know, right now, ICE agents have a 1,000% increase on attacks. Yet they're seeing a huge increase in amount of people that want to serve. There's currently 10,000 vacancies, and they have nearly 100,000 applications. I do think there's a balance where we need to go after these convicted criminals, the worst of the worst, and be able to tackle some of that. But we should be encouraging this enforcement of law, not these sanctuary cities that allow the lawlessness to take place.
No, and I think the senator was talking about how it just wasn't working during the last administration, so he was not praising that past system. But in terms of how the current one is being operated, I know you had raised concern that those being mass deported were not necessarily the worst of the worst and violent offenders. I know that because you issued that letter to ICE, and the data that came back showed that most of the convictions were for traffic or immigration offenses, not violent criminals. Less than 1% of the convictions of those deported were for homicide. Only 1.2% were for sexual assault. So doesn't that speak, though, to what Senator Kelly was saying, which is it's not the criminals, it's the grandmas?
Well, he's just telling the grandma story. He's not talking about, how DHS rounded up pedophiles and some other violent actors in Los Angeles and throughout the country. So you have to tell all sides to it. But you hit it right on the head earlier when you said immigration is a very emotional conversation, and it's where we have to get it right. You have to separate those that may be in a different situation than the worst of the worst. What I am encouraged to see is I am encouraged that after we have passed the one big beautiful bill and have given DHS $45 billion, that they are now creating these task forces and going after very strategic operations that take out the pedophiles, the murderers. Numbers matter, but more specifically, who is being detained. Traffic violations don't excite me as much, and I don't think keep communities as safe as taking out, murderers and convicted criminals that are a danger to all communities.
Do I hear you saying that this new money will now allow them to actually focus on violent offenders instead of just anyone they encounter who did at one point enter illegally?
Yes, and this is what I'm seeing, is I'm seeing a mix of these self-deportations. Secretary Noem has been very active. She's essentially has traveled Central and South America talking to a lot of heads of state, and a lot of folks are self-deporting back to these countries to the tune of hundreds of thousands. I think what that does is that alleviates some of the stress on DHS, essentially to put numbers on the board and instead create these task forces to go after these bad actors. To me, that's the secret sauce. You create these task forces and get after the worst of the worst.
Okay. We do see, though, in the courts that the Trump administration is trying to do away with limits on child detention. One of ICE's only family detention facilities is in your district in Texas. And you did vote for the One Big Beautiful Bill. And it includes a provision that allows families with children to be held indefinitely, which contradicts that long-standing precedent of putting a 20-day limit on detaining children. Do you think that needs to be changed in future legislation? Should there be limits on detaining kids?
Possibly. I mean, the legislative piece is a much more long road. What I've seen under both the Biden administration and the Trump administration is that it's a delicate balance, right? How do you keep families together? How do you make sure that there is coordination to what country they're going to? But what we don't want to see is somebody indefinitely held without having due process. But what we do want to see is after that due process is completed, that they're immediately removed in a humane environment. And, you know, I visited these facilities under both administrations, and I've never had a problem with ICE facilities. They've always allowed me to view everything I wanted. I've taken pictures, I've done videos, I've spoken to people that were there, and I think that's the important part. Our government needs to be transparent to what's happening.
And we would love to take our cameras into some of those facilities if you could help us do that, sir, because we don't have that access. And I know a number of those immigration advocates have said that. They are frustrated they don't have more access now to share with the public what they're hearing. But now I do want to ask you about this Fort Bliss facility, an Army base that's partially in your district. I understand they're trying to turn it into a place with tents, soft-sided tents, to hold 1,000 individuals under ICE custody. Doesn't blurring the lines between law enforcement and the military start to get us into uncomfortable territory?
It could, but let me give you some of the details on that facility in particular. One, the soft-sided facility is located right next door to the current ICE facility in El Paso. So while it's on Fort Bliss, it really in many cases is managed by ICE. Some other details, there's already over 100,000 illegal aliens in that facility. By the end of the week, I expect that number will raise up to over 1,000, and then in the coming weeks, it will raise to several thousand. Now, the price tag, $1.2 billion. I am a little concerned that the initial cost is $230 million that the Department of Defense is paying for, and so that's where I don't. Fort Bliss is the Swiss Army knife of the Army. They do a fantastic job of whatever mission gets sent their way, but I don't want to see Department of Defense get stuck with the bill, if you will. These is where the details matter. We just passed this $45 billion for border security. I'm hoping some of those funds reimburse Department of Defense for their efforts.
But the mixing of military and law enforcement, that part, besides the accounting, doesn't that make you uncomfortable?
Yeah, it does. I mean, well, you have to get it right. You know, if it's on base and, you know, if there's a collaboration, the fact is it makes it a streamlined process because of how close it is to the airfield, Briggs Airfield. So that in turn makes a safety issue, and it makes it just a cleaner effort. So there's a balance there, but I don't want it long term. I don't want to see soldiers operating in space. I don't think they want to be doing that. Yeah. But the fact that they're in there now, it's a seamless transition right now.
All right. Tony Gonzales, Congressman, appreciate your time. We'll be right back.